Hello everyone. Once again, I have another video that doesn't have me playing music. I know, it's just, like I said, it's hard for me to get focused on what I need to do, but I still have information that I want to put out there. So the video is going to be a little bit different in the terms of how I get there, why I think the way that I do, and hopefully answer a question within yourself if you're at that state. Like the title suggests, I have my own take on why people are totally against music theory. And unlike some people who are proponents of music theory, I actually have a couple of reasons of why it may not be right to do, at least at the time. So, this video is going to be purely anecdotal, and it's going to end up being in favor of learning music theory. I'm going to get that out there right now. If that's not something you're interested in, I totally understand. You can skip it. You don't have to listen to me rant on about all these different stories and then get to a conclusion that you may not agree with to begin with. If you do follow on the journey, I appreciate it. That's kind of why I'm hoping, I made this video and it'll get somewhere. But I want to get it out there so that way, if you're already a fan of music theory, maybe this isn't the video for you. If you want further reinforcement of your mentality, cool, stick with it. But if you're not into music theory, or you're starting to get, this is kind of who I'm marketing towards. So the other day I was watching Jared Bauer from, he used to be Wisecrack, but now he has his own channel. He was going over one of my favorite movies of all time. It's called The Prestige. It's Christopher Nolan. It's got Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. They're magicians in the turn of the industrial age. And basically, without spoiling the film, it's talking about its own concept of a magic trick through the film, which is called The Pledge, The Turn, and The Prestige. The Pledge is taking something ordinary and showing it to everyone. The Turn is defying expectations as to what you think is going to happen. The Prestige is bringing back that sense of normalcy. So the easiest trick I can kind of do this with is you take a bird, you hold it in your hand, and all of a sudden you make it disappear, and then you bring the bird back. You pull your fucking, bird out of your hat or whatever it is. There you go, right? When he was describing the film, it sparked something in me that I had been thinking about subconsciously over the last few years and was finally able to get the idea coherent enough to explain to you guys. So he was saying when Christopher Nolan was intending with that movie was to basically show you that everyday life has an inherent level of magic to it and artistry. And when we start trying to make something more spectacular, it really reveals a lot of the cracks of what's going on. So we think when we see a musician, if they can do something we can't, that they're fucking phenomenal. That they're like, oh my God, dude, I'm never going to be as good as this guy. But then you start breaking down what they do. We'll look at, I'm going to choose a modern version for once. Tim Henson, whatever it is. The Polyphia guy. I don't really care much for the genre of music, but I'm not going to be stupid and say, oh, he's not talented because I don't like his music. He's fucking creative and amazingly good. He is able to do something on guitar I can't do. But I know for a fact he has put out some, if not a lesson per se, at least a breakdown of how he does something, and it starts making sense. And now all of a sudden we're losing a little bit of that magic. It's still impressive, but when you know how to do something, it kind of just dwindles that spark, that passion that's in you. And I've known this, and I've experienced this, because when I started playing guitar, I knew a handful of things. I knew what the guitar was supposed to be tuned to. I knew the components of the guitar. And since I was actually in school for a while trying to do electronic stuff, I knew how an amp worked and how guitars worked in relation, how signals and electrical, all that. I knew how that worked. I didn't know chords. I didn't know circle of fifths. I didn't know... I barely knew notes. I knew there were 7. I didn't know where I was starting, blah, 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 shit like that. and I would write some songs. And I always felt like this rush, whether it was like adrenaline or like creativity or whatever it was, but I always felt this rush every time that I just came up with something that sounded good. And then I was able to follow up with something else that was good. One example is one of the first compositions I ever wrote. It's called Cool Breeze. I actually have it on here. I have it as a short because it's so quick. I basically just discovered all that through trial and error. But after I started playing the main riff, I go to a chord that I didn't even know was just a standard A chord, and then I go to an augment of a D, and then I go to a sustain of a, what is it, B sharp minor, yeah, a B sharp minor, and I'm like just piecing this together without any of this knowledge 17, 18 years ago. It just felt right. It's like where my fingers needed to go. I somehow just knew within this little box, this is where all I just can't mess up. My fingers can go anywhere here and I can't mess up. And as I got better at guitar, more competent, I was able to do that more and more. And then all of a sudden one day, I stopped having that. I started having instead, oh, this makes sense. Well, obviously I have to go there. I only have these many notes that I can go down. That's because I started learning more about music in general. I started learning my majors, my minors, my sevenths, diminished, augmenteds. I started understanding scales. I started figuring out what modes were and then getting proper clarification on what a mode was. And I'm just like, keep in mind, I'm playing guitar for almost 20 years. So this is at like year 5, year 6. I had already been with my blues trio and I had been figuring out things. And at that point, when I was writing my songs, I knew what key they were going to be in. I knew the chords that I was playing. Didn't know what I was doing when I was soloing most times. Every now and then, I would start writing a song, usually acoustically, where I would just figure it all out again. And I remember I went through an experimental phase. One of my favorite songs that I desperately need to finish is in a random-ass tuning. It's a very stupid random tuning, but it just fucking worked. And that reignited that passion and spark of when I was first learning guitar, when I didn't know anything. I had to figure out, basically it was F, so the tuning was F, B, C sharp, A, C, F, something like that. I know, right? I shouldn't have fucking done that on camera because I would have killed like a minute. It was a random ass tuning. I can't remember it. I only remember it because I have it written down somewhere. And I mean, like I said, it makes no sense. Like there's barely any resonance or harmony or anything like that. But you can make a lot of decent sounding chords with 2 fingers, and you get like an accent between, because the G string and the B string are basically just tuned a third apart. So basically, no matter any time I had it, like I would always have like a harmony on it, and it sounded really good. It's an awesome song. It's called Innocence, and I only have 2 verses and a chorus for it. I've not been able to really write anything else. Sorry, to summarize all that, basically I rediscovered what it was like to know nothing about music, and then just figure everything out again. And I was like, holy shit, dude! Like this is awesome. And I spent maybe a month, 2, maybe even 3, trying to write other songs in that tuning. I wrote one other one by having a capo on the 3rd fret. That one's called, well, it was Photograph, but because of Nickelback, like Pictures or something like that. And it only worked because I do a finger-picking strum pattern. So if I like strummed it all as a full chord, it would sound like garbage. But I was just able to do it. And I only used a capo because I couldn't stretch my fingers as much. So I was still able to come up with something enough to make it work. I think we should challenge ourselves more on guitar. And you don't need to go to an extreme, like try and be cool and create a new tuning. But if you find that the creativity and the passion of not knowing what this is, but you figure it out and it sounds so good, I don't want to take that away from you. There's other avenues you can do to get that later in life. after you've been playing guitar for a while, after things start making sense to you. What music theory does is it tells you how to do a magic trick. And I loved magic when I was a kid. When I started learning magic, I hated it more and stopped trying to be a magician because I didn't like knowing how these things were done. I just wanted to see the result. I just want to be able to do the result. That's actually why I love being a musician because, spoiler alert, you're basically a magician if you're even a slightly decent musician. For real. If you've ever played a show before and you've gotten even just one person like really engaged, like you're connecting with them. Music is the universal language. It doesn't matter what your lyrics are. The melody, the structure, the composition of the song can convey an idea. The words just help the illiterate. For real. So you're already capable of just doing that. You can do a magic trick without knowing how the trick works. But I'd argue that a magician, because they know how it works, they're that much more motivated to make it that special. To turn it into something so outrageous, even if it's the most mundane thing possible. There are musicians I know who just take a basic chord, and because of how they strum it, or because they add something like sweep picking, a technique, it sounds so beautiful, so different, and it looks as outlandish as it sounds. But then you break it down, and you're just like, oh, that's not really that hard. But then there's that skill involved, right? Maybe, like sweep picking, for example, is something I struggle with because I primarily finger pick. So I need to really get good at a pick again. And then I need to figure out how to keep my wrist straight and then fucking how to pluck all those strings and everything. That's not easy for me because that's not something I do. That's not something I practice. But it is still a level of magic. Because I see it and I'm like, fuck man, I wish I could do that. But I know how it works. I know what you're supposed to do. I've done some of the practices and the tutorials to get to that. Maybe that's more of a recognition of my limits of guitar. Because another thing that may shock you guys, I'm not really a guitarist. I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I've always basically said that. Now, when we're talking about my music stuff, guitar is what's most relevant to songwriting and, compositional skill. But if anything, I'm primarily a drummer because that was my first instrument. That's the instrument that I just get. It's the only instrument I can read sheet music for. Because that was the one that I was taught more classical about. But, I can play piano. I don't know the chords, but if you played piano and you showed me these things, I can match you. If you give me, it's like John Lennon said, you give me a fucking tuba, after like an hour, I'll give you something. I have a musical mind that can figure out notes, scales, and get you a result. How pretty is that result? I don't know. So there is a natural limit I have to my musical capability on every instrument because I chose for the jack of all trades aspect rather than the master of none. Although in reality, I am a master of one drums. I will never fucking say that I'm not a good drummer because I know I am. I have a consistency to it. I may not say, or I may not agree that I'm a good guitarist, but I will never disagree that I'm a good drummer, if not a great drummer. What I do normally say is that I am a great musician and a good showman because my musician skills allow me to do a lot of things on multiple instruments, and my compositional skills is I can hear what's in my head, and 99.9% of the time I write it, I play it exactly how I have it in my head on my instrument, whatever the instrument is. When it comes to being a showman, I get my crowd engaged, I have an authenticity when I'm performing, and I see the result. I see people connecting with me, like I was talking about earlier. So what does all this mean? Music theory is learning how to do a magic trick, but it's also teaching you how to be a better magician, how to make that trick come alive, catch people more. And it also helps your understanding, so when you see another guitarist doing something, you appreciate it that much more because you know how it works. And you're like, fuck, dude, Tim Hansen makes that just look so amazing because of his technical skill, his mastery of his instrument, and his capabilities as a showman. So what I would like for you to try is to keep an open mind and start learning basic chords, majors and minors. Start looking up a scale. One scale. Just one scale. Look up your major, minors, and a scale. That's it. That's the most music theory I think you need to know. And that's going to sound really stupid because you're probably like, well, I know all my chords. Okay. Prove it. Play them. Do you know where all those chords are on the neck? Because if you just know them up here, the fucking cowboy chords, that's cool. There's like 7 different ways to play like an A chord on a guitar. So I want to see all 7. Like, I want to see that. That's a little bit of mastery of your instrument. That proves competency. That doesn't even prove to me that you're a good guitarist. That proves that you're capable as a guitarist. And that's just me from a teacher standpoint. That's not me saying, as a musician, you need to be at this point. I would never say that. Music has this very weird pressure that everything is a rule until it's not. I don't like that mentality. How I've always presented it as a teacher is these are guidelines more than rules. These are guiding points to get you on a path. You can branch off that path at any point in time, and it can work. There are songs that have dissonant chords. There are songs that use, the most unnatural fucking mode, and they work. There are people who purposely sing out of key because it just heightens a song. Would I listen to it? Probably not, but you go on Spotify, they got a couple thousand views, so someone liked it. So, with that being said, if you know a little bit of theory, start looking at other guitarists. Start seeing what they're doing. And then see if you get that appreciation that I'm talking about. See if all of a sudden you're just like, oh, so when he's doing that scale, he's in this mode, and that allows him to go between these notes. And he can play in these keys now. You know what I mean? Like, it's really that easy. And then if you choose to learn more theory, what I'm going to tell you is going to happen is you're going to start thinking like I did. You're going to be like, oh, okay, well, that's what makes sense. That's obviously what I should do next. To counter that, go and learn something new. Learn a new instrument. Play 12-string guitar if you don't want to learn a new instrument per se. Do something that retrains your brain that it's like, oh, well, this is familiar, but it's not what I know. And you'll find that passion and that creative spark again. And even if for some reason that doesn't work for you, at least you're going to have that appreciation for these musicians who truly are skilled and capable. And hopefully it'll inspire you. There's a lot of musicians who, they get all fucking bent out of shape when they're like, oh, well, I'll never be the next Tommy Emmanuel. I get bent out of shape that I'm not going to be the next Tommy Emmanuel. He's fucking phenomenal. But I'm also motivated to write songs that are more me, with my skill set, with my capabilities. And because of that, there's no competition. I'm not trying to beat anyone. If you have a mentality that you want to be better than a musician, you're wrong. You're flawed. I'm not going to get into it now because that's not the point of this. What I want you to do is I want you to be an open perspective and how do you be a better you? How do you develop your sound more? How do you develop your skill more so that every time you play a song, it's like when you're on the radio and it's like, Robert Plant singing the second it starts. Fucking Angus Young the second it fucking starts. I want that for you. That's what your goal should be. And learning music theory gives you that appreciation. It helps define your sound. And it gives you a whole new perspective of how it works. And don't get me wrong, you do lose something out of it. There is something to be said about people who are like, yeah, I'm just worried that I'm going to lose my creativity when I learn theory. You do. Because your brain doesn't recognize it as creativity anymore. It recognizes it as problem solving. But I just gave some examples, and I know it's possible because I did it myself. Halfway through my guitar playing career, I did it myself to reignite that. And that's why I had a drive to learn all these different instruments, because I wanted something familiar that still felt like I was creating something. It's more than possible. So I would highly recommend learn all your majors and minors, where to play them on the guitar, and learn one scale. And take that scale and just go across the board. Find it. Use it. If you feel you're losing too much, then stop. Don't learn anymore. Just take that. That was a trade, all right? You did something nice for me. I appreciate it. And you lost something. You lost a little bit of your creativity. But we didn't take it away completely. There's still a possibility for you to keep that creativeness, that creative spark. But on the off chance that it made sense and now you have that deeper appreciation, that's all I wanted. I just wanted you to be more receptive to music theory, why it exists, why you should learn it. There are costs, but I'm telling you, man, especially now, 32 years old, playing guitar for almost 20 years, those pros, man, they outweigh the cons so much. I have such a love and passion and respect for musicians who are better than me, more technically skilled, know more about theory than I do. It's a motivator. And not everyone can do that. But I feel, unlike when you don't know music theory, it's like you get stopped. Because you see all these magicians doing all these tricks and your brain just cannot comprehend how the world works anymore. I don't want you to get lost like that. That is what causes people to stop being musicians, to stop performing, to stop playing. There is no one I know who learned music theory who quit music. Now, one can argue, well, obviously, they're dedicated enough to learn music theory to begin with. No. It's because they learn on the small scale how music works, and they can never not see it. You never not hear it. You never don't listen to a song on the radio and piece together, oh, well, we're in the key of C, he's doing a Locrian mode, blah, blah, blah. So there's some points to that. You know, I've never met a musician who learned theory who quit music. So maybe that's the trade. You won't quit music if you learn a baseline of theory. You know what? I think that's a good trade. I think for losing a little bit of creativity, I think it's more than worth it. So, thank you if you watched this video. I know it was a bit of a ramble. I know I kind of reiterated the same thing over and over again. I tried to say it in a bunch of different ways that hopefully clicks with you, because I got to tell you, man, I'm pretty fucking thick-headed. There's a lot of life lessons that I should have figured out more sooner, but I didn't. And it just took people saying it over and over and over again before it made sense to me. So that's kind of why some of my videos are kind of just repeat. Hopefully it made sense for you all. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later.